Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to this deep dive. Imagine stepping off a plane and just, stripping off your designer clothes.
Right. Taking off your expensive watch, leaving your job title behind.
Exactly. You're leaving behind your entire earthly identity, really. Imagine wrapping your body in two simple pieces of unstitched white cloth.
Which is the exact same unstitched white cloth that you'll eventually be wrapped in when you're buried.
Yeah, it's heavy. Because you aren't just going on a vacation and you aren't just taking a spiritual retreat. You are quite literally rehearsing your own death.
And your ultimate meeting with your creator. It is the absolute definition of a multidimensional journey.
So for you listening, whether you are preparing for this journey yourself or you're just fascinated by, one of the most profound mass migrations of humanity on Earth, our mission today is to explore the reality of Hajj and Umrah.
Step by step.
Right. We're diving into the logistics, the spiritual mechanics behind those logistics, and the critical pitfalls to avoid. And to do this, we are grounding our conversation in a really comprehensive guide authored by Imam Ibn Baz.
It's an incredible text.
It really is. What struck me immediately is that it reads less like a travel brochure and, well, more like a spiritual survival manual.
That is the perfect way to frame it, because the stakes laid out in this text are just unfathomably high. Imam Ibn Baz explicitly describes this journey not as a trip, but as a migration toward Allah.
A migration. I love that phrasing.
And that migration is built entirely on the foundational concept of Tawhid, the absolute, uncompromised unity and oneness of God. So the overarching theme we're going to see today is this incredibly delicate balance.
The balance between the physical actions and the internal state, right?
Exactly. The precise physical actions, the what balanced with pure, uncorrupted spiritual intention, the why.
It's a tightrope walk. I mean, if you have the physical actions without the intention, you're just performing an empty routine.
You're essentially doing rigorous calisthenics in the desert.
Yeah, but on the flip side, if you have all this beautiful intention, but you ignore the prescribed actions, the text warns that you veer into innovation.
Right, making up your own religion. The ritual is the vessel, and the intention is the water that fills it. You need both.
So before we even talk about getting on a plane, the text demands that you prepare your internal foundation. You have to clean house.
The prerequisites are rigorous. You're instructed to sincerely repent for all your past sins.
And resolve disputes, pay off debts if you can, and this is a big one. You must ensure the funds you use come from strictly lawful halal earnings.
Yeah. You cannot fund the ultimate spiritual journey with money from fraud or interest or unethical business.
That just speaks to the deeply holistic nature of the Islamic worldview, I think.
Oh, absolutely. There's no separation between your financial ledger and your spiritual ledger. The money you use to buy the plane ticket matters to God.
Because you're arriving as a guest of the most merciful.
Right. If you're invited to the house of a king, you don't arrive covered in the mud of stolen wealth.
Or a grimy heart. The text even gets down to the microscopic level of daily behavior, demanding you guard your tongue against backbiting and arguing, which is often harder than controlling your wallet.
Very true.
But once that foundation is set, the pilgrim is faced with a massive logistical choice regarding the type of Hajj. The text breaks down three methods: tamattu, qiran, and ifrad.
Let's pull back the curtain on these because it dictates the whole physical rhythm of the journey.
Okay, let's start with tamattu, which translates roughly to interrupted, right?
Or enjoyment, yeah. In this method, the pilgrim enters the restricted state of Ihram, specifically to perform the Umrah, the lesser pilgrimage.
So they arrive in Makkah, do the Umrah rituals, and then this is the key. They completely exit the state of Ihram.
Exactly. They cut their hair, take off the white garments, put normal clothes back on, and return to normalcy. They can take a scented shower, relax.
That sounds like a huge relief.
It is. Then days later, on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, they re-enter Ihram from Makkah specifically for the Hajj.
So it's two distinct sets of rituals with an intermission in between.
Precisely. Then we have Qiran, which means combined. Here, you declare your intention for both Umrah and Hajj simultaneously.
So you don't take off the Hiram garments in between.
You do not. You remain in that highly restricted state continuously, right up until the day of sacrifice.
Wow, that sounds like an incredible test of endurance, just wearing the same unstitched cloth for weeks.
It's a profound marathon of self-discipline. And finally, there's Ifrad, the single Hajj, where you enter Ihram solely for the Hajj itself without doing an Umrah first.
Now, reading through the guide, Imam Ibn Baz strongly emphasizes one of these for the average pilgrim. He points out that tamatu, the interrupted method, is highly recommended.
Yes, specifically for those who aren't physically bringing a sacrificial animal with them all the way from their homeland.
Which is most people today, right?
Yeah, exactly. The Prophet Muhammad himself, peace be upon him, strongly urged his companions who arrived without animals to break their ihram and make it a tamatu.
It provides that necessary physical relief. Surviving the desert climate, the crowds, it takes a toll.
It really does. That period of rest allows the body to recover. So when the intense core days of Hajj arrive, you have the stamina to be fully present.
Makes total sense. God isn't trying to torture the believer. Now, we've used this word ihram a few times. Let's dive into what this is, because it leads us to the physical boundary where the journey officially begins, the miqat.
The miqat is a designated geographical station, a boundary line outside Makkah. You cannot cross it without entering the state of ihram.
I love thinking about ihram this way. It's not just a dress code. It is a spiritual cocoon with very strict, non-negotiable terms of service.
You are opting into a highly regulated state of being. And the prohibitions are intense. Once you make your intention, you cannot cut your nails, you cannot cut or pull out a single hair.
And no scent of any kind.
Right, and we should clarify, no scented soaps, no perfumes, and even avoiding scent intentionally mixed into food or drink.
Plus, you can't hunt. You can't propose marriage or officiate a marriage, and sexual relations with your spouse are completely forbidden.
Let's analyze the why behind that list. Why marriage proposals? Why hunting?
It's about stripping away worldly pursuits, isn't it?
Exactly. It systematically strips away the ego, social adornment, luxury, and the basic driving pursuits of humanity's sustenance through hunting and legacy through marriage.
You're stripped down to your most vulnerable essence. It forces the CEO and the taxi driver into the exact same plane of existence.
Which is brilliantly reflected in the clothing. For men, the uniform is startlingly specific. 2 unsewn pieces of cloth, preferably white.
The izar wraps around the waist, and the rida drapes over the shoulders. No hats, no sewn shirts, no trousers.
The text does offer a pragmatic exception if an izar is absolutely unavailable. Trousers may be worn, but the overwhelming default is the unsewn cloth.
Because when you remove the tailoring, you remove the brand names and the visual cues of wealth. Everyone looks identical from a distance.
Now, the ihram dress code for women is entirely different.
Right, I noticed that. They don't wear the 2 unsewn garments. They wear their regular, culturally suitable clothes. But there's a strict prohibition I wanted to ask about.
Go ahead.
The text says women in ihram are forbidden from wearing gloves, and specifically a tailored face veil like a niqab. What's the practical mechanism behind restricting the face covering specifically?
That's a brilliant observation. The mechanism is about the definition of the sacred state for women. The Prophet stated that the ihram of a woman is in her face.
Interesting.
So the restriction is against wearing a garment tailored specifically to fit the face like a tied-on niqab. However, the text adds a critical nuance regarding modesty.
Which is?
If a woman is around non-relative male strangers, she should still conceal her face by naturally drawing her head covering or shawl down over it. She just can't wear the stitched, dedicated face mask.
Ah, I see. It alters her normal habit while maintaining modesty. Now, if you're listening and thinking that remembering all these rules sounds incredibly stressful, I had the exact same thought.
It can seem overwhelming.
Right. Like, what if you go to a public bathroom and absent-mindedly pump scented soap? Or swat a mosquito reflexively? Do you ruin your entire pilgrimage over an accident?
Imam Ibn Baz's text is incredibly reassuring on this point. It reveals the underlying mercy in Islamic jurisprudence.
Oh, thank goodness.
The guide states clearly that if a person commits these prohibitions, uses perfume, pulls a hair, wears a sewn garment out of forgetfulness or pure ignorance of the rule, there is no expiation required, no penalty.
The sigh of relief from millions of pilgrims right there.
But there's one condition. They must stop doing the prohibited thing the absolute second they remember.
So if you realize your shirt is sewn, take it off immediately.
Exactly. Wash off the scented soap. The religion isn't a tripwire waiting for you to fail. It evaluates your conscious intention.
And the text lists things that are completely permissible, just to ease people's minds. You can wear sandals, rings, glasses, hearing aids.
You can wear a money belt for your passport.
You can bathe. You can wash your hair, gently scratch your head. If a few hairs fall out naturally while washing, it doesn't matter. It's only if you intentionally pluck them.
Intentionality is the engine of the entire ritual. And speaking of intention, once dressed in ihram at the miqat, You don't just think your intention, you vocalize it.
You begin that rhythmic chant, the talbiyah. The wording is so powerful. Labbaik Allahumma, labbaik.
Here I am at your service, O Lord, here I am.
No partner do you have. Here I am. Truly, the praise and the favor is yours and the dominion. No partner do you have.
Men project their voices and say this aloud, while women are instructed to say it silently to themselves.
Just imagine the sensory experience. Hundreds of thousands of people converging on Makkah, men uniformly in white, all chanting this exact same phrase.
It creates a massive, continuous, rolling thunder of devotion, an audible manifestation of Tawhid.
One unified body of humanity calling out to one God. It's the ultimate arrival announcement. Here I am.
And that sets the rhythm for the physical arrival in Makkah, leading right into the step-by-step guide to the Umrah.
Right. So the pilgrim enters the city limits. They make their way to the sacred mosque, Al-Masjid Al-Haram.
The sheer scale of it is staggering, but the focal point is immediate. The tawaf begins. You approach the Kaaba, the massive black cube in the center.
And the ritual requires making 7 complete circuits around it, always counterclockwise, Kaaba on your left.
You begin at the corner with the black stone. The text instructs you to face it, say Allahu Akbar, God is the greatest, and initiate the count.
Now, as you orbit, the text is remarkably open. You can praise Allah, make personal supplications, read Quran, but there is one specific ancient supplication between the Yamani corner and the black stone, right?
Yes, to complete the lap. It's a prayer that captures the totality of human desire. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina adhaban nar.
Our Lord, give us good in this world and good in the hereafter, and save us from the punishment of the fire. It's so brilliantly concise.
It asks for health, provision, and peace right now, and ultimate salvation later. After the 7th circuit, the physical orbit ends, and you move to the station of Ibrahim.
That's the structure enclosing the footprint of the Prophet Abraham, peace be upon him.
Exactly. The pilgrim prays 2 short units of prayer behind it.
Then the momentum completely shifts. From a circular orbit to a linear sprint, the pilgrim moves to the Sa'i.
This is the walking, or running, between the 2 small hills called Safa and Marwa, which are now fully enclosed within the mosque.
You climb the incline of Safa, face the Kaaba, praise Allah, raise your hands, and say Allahu Akbar 3 times.
Followed by a specific triumphant declaration of faith. There is no deity except Allah, the one without a partner. You repeat the formula 3 times, making personal supplications in between.
Then you descend Safa and walk toward Marwa. The text details a specific variation in pace here. For most of the walk, it's a normal pace. But between 2 green markers, men are instructed to accelerate and run vigorously.
We have to unpack the history here because it's one of the most beautiful elements.
Yeah.
This running is a direct historical reenactment of Hajar, the wife of Abraham.
Left in the barren desert with her infant son, Ishmael.
Yes. When her water ran out, she ran frantically back and forth between these 2 hills, scanning the horizon for help.
The acceleration between the green posts marks the bottom of the ancient valley where the sand was softest, so she had to run harder.
Just think about the profundity of that. Millions of people, kings, scholars, warriors, are all commanded by God to trace the exact panicked footsteps of a lone, desperate mother.
It's a stunning elevation of her faith. Her maternal panic transformed into a foundational pillar of a global faith. It's breathtaking.
It really is. You transit between the hills 7 times. Safa to Marwa is 1. Marwa back to Safa is 2.
And when you finish the 7th at Marwa, the physical exertion of the Umrah is done. Now it's time to officially exit Ihram. Men shave their heads or shorten their hair evenly.
And women gather their hair and cut only a tiny amount, about the length of a fingertip.
With the falling of that hair, the Umrah concludes. The heavy prohibitions are instantly lifted. You can go to your hotel, take a long shower, apply perfume. The relief is immense.
Absolutely.
Now, there's a psychological insight here I want to highlight. Reading through Imam Ibn Baz's guide, I kept bracing myself for a massive, rigid list of required chants for every single step.
Like a script, you have to read word for word.
Right. On lap 3, say this exact paragraph. But the text explicitly states there are no strictly required formulas aside from a few moments.
The author notes, it is up to the worshiper to praise Allah or supplicate him in his own words.
Yes, you have the freedom to just speak to God in your native language, pouring out your specific worries and debts.
The psychological wisdom in that freedom is profound. When a ritual enforces a strict script in a language you might not fully understand, it easily degrades into a robotic chant.
You're just focusing on syllables instead of connecting with the divine.
Exactly. Leaving the script open forces you to be emotionally present. You're exhausted, your defenses are down, and you are simply talking to your creator.
It keeps the ritual alive. So that is the complete Umrah. For a pilgrim doing the Tamatu method, they rest in Makkah as a normal civilian now, but the clock is ticking.
Because the main event is about to begin, performing the Hajj itself.
And the rhythm changes completely. The Hajj is a strict chronological progression tied to specific days. There is no flexibility in the timeline.
We'll walk through this assuming the pilgrim is continuing their Tamatu journey. It all kicks off on the 8th day of the Islamic month of Dhul Hijjah.
On the morning of the 8th, the resting period is over. You take a bath, men put on the unsewn garments again, and re-enter Idram from their hotel room.
And then the city empties out. Millions of people travel a few miles to a massive valley called Mina, a temporary city of fireproof tents.
The objective here on the 8th is purely logistical and spiritual preparation. You stay in Mina and pray 5 specific prayers: Dur, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, and Fajr of the following day.
Now, there is a specific rule here. Prayers that are normally 4 rakats are shortened to 2. But, unlike normal travel rules, they are not combined.
You still pray each one at its designated time. Why this specific nuance? Why shorten but not combine?
It's a fascinating balance. Shortening acknowledges the physical displacement, providing ease. But not combining them forces you to remain tethered to the rhythm of the day.
So you can't just knock out 2 prayers and take a nap.
Right, you have to pause, reset your intention, and stand in prayer at every appointed hour. It settles the mind and prepares you for the monumental weight of the next morning.
Because the next morning is the absolute pinnacle of the journey. The 9th of Dhul Hijjah, the day of Arafat.
The Prophet stated plainly, Hajj is Arafat. If you miss standing in Arafat on this day, you have missed the Hajj entirely. No making it up.
Wow. So after the sun rises on the 9th, this massive tide of humanity leaves Mina and proceeds to the plain of Arafat. They arrive, pray the noon and afternoon prayers shortened and combined, this time to free up the afternoon for one single act.
The act of standing?
Wukuf.
They stand within the physical boundaries of Arafat. And the text is incredibly firm that you must verify you are actually inside the borders.
Okay.
And then they just remain there until after the sun sets.
Let's paint a picture of the psychological weight here. Millions of people, stripped of status, wearing identical white shrouds, standing in the unforgiving desert heat.
Facing the Qibla, raising their hands for hours.
They weep, they beg for forgiveness, pouring out every regret. It's an apocalyptic visual, but in the most redemptive way possible.
The closest earthly simulation of the Day of Judgment. Everyone waiting on the mercy of the Almighty. The energy there is described as almost electric. And God's response to this vulnerability, according to tradition, is immense. It's the day God descends to the lowest heaven and boasts to the angels about his servants who have come dusty and disheveled. The day of ultimate forgiveness.
So once the sun officially disappears, the physical march resumes. The text instructs pilgrims to proceed calmly to an open area called Muzdalifah.
At Muzdalifah, the exhaustion really sets in. You pray sunset and night prayers combined, and then you rest. Most sleep right on the open ground under the stars.
But before you sleep, you have a crucial task. You have to gather ammunition.
Exactly. You scour the ground for 7 small pebbles, roughly the size of a chickpea, though the text notes practically you can collect these anywhere within Al-Haram.
Right. So you wake up, pray dawn, and march back to the tent city of Mina before sunrise, because the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, the day of sacrifice, is an absolute gauntlet.
Very action-packed. First, you take those 7 pebbles and head to the Jamarat, the stoning pillars, specifically the pillar of Aqaba. You throw the pebbles one by one, saying Allahu Akbar with each strike.
After the stoning comes the sacrifice. You slaughter a sheep or shear a camel or cow. You eat a portion, but most is distributed to the needy. Now, I have to challenge this from an economic standpoint.
Sure.
What if a pilgrim spent their life savings just on the flight? What if they genuinely cannot afford the sacrifice? Does their Hajj fail?
Imam Ibn Baz addresses this directly from the Quran, highlighting the safety valves of Islamic law. It accommodates the economic reality. If you can't afford it, it becomes obligatory to fast for 10 days instead.
Oh, wow.
3 days during a Hajj period itself and 7 days after returning home.
It demands a sacrifice of wealth or physical sustenance, but never what a person cannot bear. That's beautiful. So after the sacrifice, it's time for a physical transformation. Men shave or cut their hair, women cut a fingertip's length.
And that haircut is the trigger. It initiates the first partial release from Ihram.
Boom! You can shower, put normal clothes on, apply perfume. The restrictions are lifted, with one major exception: sexual intercourse remains forbidden.
To achieve full release, you must travel back into the heart of Makkah.
Right. For the Tawaf al-Ifada, the mandatory essential Tawaf of the Hajj. 7 circuits, followed by the Sa'i between Safa and Marwa.
Once that's done, the final restriction falls away. Your Hajj's core pillars are secure.
But the endurance test isn't over. I think a lot of people misunderstand the timeline here. You don't just pack your bags and go to the airport. You have to travel back to Mina for the 11th, 12th, and 13th, the days of Tashriq.
Why stay in crowded tents for 3 extra days? It's an incredible test of psychological endurance and habituation. The emotional high of Arafat is over. Now you're in the grind.
And your primary duty is to stone the pillars. But not just one pillar this time. Every afternoon, you must stone all 3 pillars.
The logistics are mind-boggling. Millions of people moving toward the same 3 structures.
Smallest pillar, 7 pebbles. Middle pillar, 7. Large pillar, 7. That's 21 pebbles a day.
And the text details a beautiful tradition here. After the first and second pillars, you step aside, face the Qibla, and make a long, earnest supplication.
It's not a hit-and-run operation. You engage physically, then pivot to internal prayer. By doing this 3 days in a row, it becomes muscle memory.
Cementing a habit of striking away negative influences before you're released back into the real world. Though you can't leave Mina after 2 days if you depart before sunset on the 12th.
Finally, when Tashriq is over, there is one final mandatory act: the farewell tawaf.
One last orbit around the Kaaba. And it must be the absolute final action you take in Makkah. You collect your luggage and depart. No shopping afterward.
Your final physical engagement must be circling the house of God. It's a rigorous, deeply physical manifestation of faith. But here is where the narrative takes a critical turn.
Things go wrong.
Exactly. You have millions of sleep-deprived, spiritually charged people. The psychological pressure cooker is immense. And this is exactly where Ibn Battu's text shifts into a crisis management manual. Because sheer zeal frequently leads to catastrophic mistakes.
The author dedicates a massive portion to correcting common errors and innovations known as bid'ah.
Almost none of these errors are born out of malice. Pilgrims just want to do more. They want extra blessings. Their enthusiasm hijacks their rationality.
Ibn Baz provides a masterclass in jurisprudence here. He reinforces the hierarchy of rules, the difference between what is fard strictly obligatory and what is sunnah recommended.
Let's use an analogy. If building a secure foundation is fard, polishing the windows is sunnah. You don't take a sledgehammer to your foundation to polish a window, but that's exactly what pilgrims do in Makkah.
Perfect analogy. Imam Ibn Baz points out the tragic irony. Safeguarding the physical safety of fellow Muslims is fard. Kissing the black stone is sunnah.
Yet people will literally trample other believers just to get their licks on that stone.
They're committing a major sin to accomplish a recommended act. How is it possible to carry out a sunnah observance while doing a haram deed? It's theological madness. Just point at the stone from a distance and say, Allahu Akbar.
Protecting your fellow pilgrim is the most commendable thing you can do. The text highlights several other specific errors, right?
During Tawaf, pilgrims frantically wipe their hands all over the Kaaba walls, seeking barakah or blessings.
But the Prophet only touched the black stone in Yamani corner. The blessing comes from obedience, not rubbing a brick.
Right. Another error is restricting oneself to mass-printed formulas. We touched on this. Pilgrims reading from booklets, terrified of saying the wrong syllable, completely ignoring the presence of God.
Put the booklets down. What about the Sa'i errors?
You'll see pilgrims face the Kaaba and gesticulate as if beginning daily ritual prayers. The text corrects this. Just raise your hands normally. No special prayer poses needed.
But the most catastrophic errors happen at Arafat. The stakes here are all or nothing. The text warns some pilgrims camp out and stand outside the marked boundaries of Arafat.
Which completely and utterly invalidates the Hajj. Hajj is Arafat. If you don't physically cross into the boundaries, you didn't perform it.
Other pilgrims try to leave before sunset, or they struggle through dangerous crowds to climb Mount Arafat, thinking the hill itself is holier. The text clarifies the whole plain is valid, climbing just causes unnecessary hardship.
Then the stoning errors in Mina, which are fascinating.
Oh, this is where the symbolism is completely misunderstood. People think they are literally fighting the devil.
They think the stone pillar is an actual physical manifestation of Satan. So they become violently enraged. They throw massive rocks, heavy shoes, pieces of wood.
Imam Ibn Baz corrects this violently. The text states clearly that throwing pebbles is prescribed merely as a means of remembering Allah. It's symbolic. Throwing shoes or boulders is an aggressive excess strictly prohibited.
And logistically, Some people gather all 7 pebbles and hurl them all at once. But that only counts as one throw. You have to throw them individually.
Finally, during the farewell tawaf, some pilgrims try to walk backwards all the way out of the massive mosque, stumbling into people because they think it's disrespectful to turn their back on the Kaaba.
It's a complete innovation without basis. The Prophet walked out normally, humans inventing hardship to feel more pious.
Okay, we've exhaustively covered Makkah, but there is another city intricately linked to this journey. Let's pivot to visiting the Prophet's mosque in Medina.
And we must immediately establish a crucial distinction. Visiting Medina has absolutely no connection to the rites or validity of the Hajj itself.
None at all.
None. Your Hajj is 100% valid whether you ever set foot in Medina or not. However, traveling there to visit the Prophet's mosque is a highly recommended sunnah.
Millions of pilgrims make the trip before or after their Hajj, and there's a specific dignified etiquette for this visit.
You enter with your right foot first, reciting a specific prayer.
You walk in, and your first action is to pray 2 rakats of Tahiyat al-Masjid. The text notes it's preferable to perform this in the Rada, a specific area between the Prophet's pulpit and his grave.
Described as one of the gardens of paradise. After that prayer, you move to the grave of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. You stand respectfully with a hushed voice and say, Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyya wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Peace be on you, O Prophet, and the mercy and blessings of Allah. Then you step to your right to greet Abu Bakr, the first caliph, and one more step to greet Umar, the second caliph.
It's also recommended to visit the Mosque of Quba and the graveyard of the martyrs of Uhud.
The atmosphere is famously tranquil compared to Makkah, but just like Makkah, this deep love for the Prophet can overflow into dangerous theological territory. The text issues its sternest warnings here regarding shirk polytheism and bid'ah innovation.
The author's warnings are absolute. Pilgrims, overwhelmed by emotion, try to wipe their hands on the walls or iron grills of the tomb. They kiss the metal or tie threads to the grating, believing it grants special blessings or cures illnesses.
The text unequivocally states these acts are prohibited innovations. Blessings come from obeying God, not physically rubbing the architecture of his tomb.
But it goes further, addressing the gravest error. Some pilgrims stand at the grave and call upon the Prophet himself. They ask him directly to fulfill needs, cure sick children.
And Imam Ibn Baz drops the theological hammer here. He states making tawaf around the chamber or asking the deceased for help is shirk. It is the ultimate sin of associating partners with God.
The reasoning is clear. The Prophet's life in the grave is in a state called barzakh, an unseen intermediary state. The mechanics of that state are known only to Allah. All requests for supernatural help must be directed to Allah alone.
The text grounds this prohibition by quoting the Quran directly, and it extends this warning to the geography around Makkah, warning against hiking out to caves like Hira or Tower just to hang pieces of cloth or perform special prayers. It's a fabricated hardship.
It all comes back to maintaining the uncorrupted purity of Tawhid. The Prophet was the ultimate messenger, but remains a human servant of God.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most intense layer: spiritual guidance and the violations of Islam.
Throughout this text, we've been immersed in physical mechanics, but Ibn Baz zooms out to the macro level. The warning is stark. You can perform the physical rites with absolute perfection, but if your core belief system is corrupted, the ritual is rendered useless.
To ensure the Hajj is accepted, the pilgrim must avoid things that nullify their Islam entirely. It outlines 10 nullifiers of faith. Let's analyze the key ones.
The first is shirk, as we just discussed. The second is intrinsically linked, setting up intermediaries between oneself and Allah. Believing you need a saint or dead prophet to carry your prayers to God breaks the core tenet of Islam.
What's striking is how he draws a hard line between private faith and societal structures. Another violation is believing that systems or laws made by humans are better than the Sharia of Islam.
Right.
Saying Islamic punishments are outdated, for example, is listed as a nullifier. For the listener, whether you agree with that worldview or not, it's crucial to understand that within this theological framework, Islam isn't just a private feeling. It's a comprehensive legal, social, and political framework designed by the Creator.
It is a holistic ecosystem. You cannot accept the spiritual comfort while rejecting structural rules. Other violations include the practice of magic or turning away completely from the religion.
Or harboring hatred for any part of what the messenger made lawful. The text quotes the Quran. Because they disliked what Allah has revealed, their deeds are brought to nothing.
It's a rigorous, demanding theological framework.
It is heavy, but what I found incredibly moving is the contrast that immediately follows. You have these stark warnings, but then you turn the page, and Imam Ibn Baz provides a collection of the most incredibly beautiful, vulnerable supplications.
It captures the duality of the divine in Islam, strict justice and terrifying power on one hand, and infinite mercy and tender compassion on the other.
Let me just read a few fragments from these prayers. Listen to the psychological depth here. O Allah, I seek refuge in you from worry and sorrow. I seek refuge in you from impotence and sloth, from stinginess and cowardice, and I seek refuge in you from the burden of debt and from being humbled by men.
Being humbled by men. That specific fear of earthly disgrace.
Yeah.
It's so deeply human.
And this one. O Allah, give my soul piety and my conscience purity. You are the master of my soul and the guardian of my conscience.
And a mission of total internal surrender.
But here is the one that stopped me in my tracks. O Allah, I seek refuge in you from a knowledge which does not benefit, from a heart which does not tremble, from an ego which is not sated, and from a supplication which is not accepted.
Wow.
A heart which does not tremble. It's a prayer begging God not to let you become someone who knows all the rules of Hajj but feels nothing when they look at the Kaaba.
If we connect these trembling words back to the physical reality of the Hajj,
Yeah.
think about what the pilgrim has physically endured. They stripped off their status symbols. They wore the shroud of the dead.
Walked miles simulating a starving mother.
Slept on dirt under the open sky. Arched in searing heat, pressed against millions of strangers, they are completely physically broken down.
And that is the mechanism, isn't it?
That is the secret of the Hajj. The exhaustion, the restrictions, it's reverse engineered to systematically strip away the human ego. You cannot maintain arrogance when you're sweating in a crowd of 2 million people wearing the exact same towel as the person next to you.
The physical rites break your defenses down so your heart is finally soft enough to actually mean the words of those beautiful supplications.
The rites physically manufacture the exact state of vulnerability expressed in those prayers.
It's a complete teardown and rebuild of the human soul. Which brings us to the end of our journey today. We've explored the strict rules of the Ihram, the orbits of the Tawaf, the physical marathon of Hajj, the dangerous pitfalls, and arrived finally at the quiet, trembling heart in supplication.
It's a journey that fundamentally alters the trajectory of a person's life.
And that leads me to a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Think back to those days of Tashriq in Mina, when the exhausted pilgrim stands there and throws those last pebbles at the stone pillar. They aren't just leaving rocks behind in the dust. Symbolically, they are meant to be violently casting away their own internal distractions, their bad habits, their secret sins.
Their massive ego.
Exactly. So the ultimate question is this. When the Hajj is over, when the unstitched white Ihram garments finally come off and you put your regular clothes back on to board that crowded flight home, how do you ensure that the pure, unburdened, fiercely humble version of yourself doesn't get left behind in Makkah? How do you make sure that the pilgrim you became out there in the desert travels back home with you into the rush hour traffic, the stress of office politics, and the relentless grind of your daily life?
That integration, bringing the sacred back into the mundane, that is the real test of the Hajj.
Jazakallah khair. May Allah reward you with goodness for spending your valuable time listening to us.